Mexico City, 1955. Inside a dimly lit room, an exiled Cuban lawyer sits down with an Argentine doctor for a conversation stretching through the night. By dawn, Fidel Castro and Ernesto Che Guevara had forged a pact. They were going to return to Cuba and overthrow its government. Their target was Fulgencio Batista, a dictator ruling the island as a proxy for American interests. Outmanned and outgunned, their guerrilla tactics slowly dismantled Batista's military. The decisive blow came in the city of Santa Clara, when Che Guevara used bulldozers to rip up the tracks and derail an armored train carrying Batista's heavy weapons. By early 1959, Cuba was theirs. But seizing power meant the hardest part was just beginning. By stripping American monopolies of their casinos and assets, Castro and Guevara instantly became the prime targets of the United States. The retaliation arrived quickly. A French cargo ship carrying munitions to Havana Harbor was ripped apart by two massive timed explosions. Castro understood immediately that the CIA was actively trying to destabilize his new government. Right as the threats escalated, Che Guevara honored his original agreement. He left Cuba to ignite socialist revolutions in other countries, leaving Castro alone on the island to face the incoming storm. Knowing his military couldn't survive an American invasion, Castro made a massive pivot. He reached out to the Soviet Union and President Nikita Khrushchev. In exchange for a foothold near U.S. shores, the KGB sent their top agents to Havana. Cuba had to transform from a vulnerable island into an impenetrable fortress to survive the world's most powerful intelligence agency. Over the following decades, the CIA attempted to assassinate Fidel Castro an astounding 638 times. They designed an exploding cigar, packing his favorite Kohima brand with high-grade detonators, meant to blow his head off. They bribed a waiter to slip a botulism-laced freezing pill into his daily chocolate milkshake. They even infected a personalized scuba diving suit with flesh-eating fungus and loaded the oxygen tank with tuberculosis germs. He survived every single attempt. And it wasn't due to luck. The KGB had helped Cuba merge its local intelligence into a highly specialized elite network known as the G2. The G2 engineered a comprehensive system to make Castro completely invisible to CIA spies and snipers. This diagram shows the G2's three-ring system, a layered defense protocol. The inner ring consisted of fiercely loyal human shields. The second ring deployed plainclothes spotters to blend into crowds, while the outer perimeter locked down entire city blocks 24 hours before Castro arrived. Then came the decoy planning. The G2 recruited men who shared Castro's height and build, forming a unit called the Shadows. They were trained to walk, gesture, and smoke exactly like him, to confuse anyone watching through a rifle scope. They applied the same logic to his transit. Castro traveled in a fleet of identical Soviet limousines. Whenever the motorcade passed through a tunnel, the vehicles would rapidly swap positions, making it impossible to know which car held the president. Finally, he operated on a ghost schedule. Castro unpredictably rotated between 24 secret safe houses around Havana. Each home was stocked with his exact clothes and cigars, so he never carried luggage, and his drivers only received turn-by-turn directions mid-route. If the CIA couldn't isolate the real Castro, they couldn't execute their plots. This visual breaks down the MICE framework, a KGB tool the G2 used to flip American agents. M stands for money, targeting the debt-ridden. I is for ideology, recruiting those who actively hated U.S. foreign policy. C is for compromise, using hidden microphones in hotel rooms to blackmail operatives. And E stands for ego, finding intelligence officers who felt undervalued at work. They also launched the Trojan Refugee Program. G2 agents posed as exiled Cubans fleeing to America to infiltrate anti-Castro groups. To pass the mandatory CIA polygraph tests, they were trained for months to control their breathing rhythms and fully internalize fake memories. Their infiltration reached the very top of the U.S. military. Ana Belén Montes, a senior intelligence analyst, was flipped using the ideology tactic. Known as the Queen of Cuba, she fed the Pentagon's most sensitive secrets directly to Havana for 17 years. Cuba had successfully weaponized its defensive shield, turning the American intelligence apparatus inside out. In 1967, the devastating news reached Havana. Che Guevara had been captured and executed by CIA-backed forces in Bolivia. To prevent his grave from becoming a symbol, the military severed his hands for identification and buried his body in secret. Castro responded immediately. He pivoted his massive G2 network away from protecting himself and directed them toward retribution. Teams were dispatched worldwide to hunt down and assassinate the Bolivian officials responsible for Che's death. But finding Che's remains required a much longer game. G2 deployed sleeper agents to Bolivia, living undercover as local doctors and businessmen. They were ordered to wait quietly for decades until the military officers involved in the secret burial retired and finally felt safe enough to talk. Here is how they cracked the case. In 1995, a retired Bolivian general slipped up in a newspaper interview, mentioning a burial site near Valle Grande Airport. G2 analysts immediately cross-referenced vintage 1960s photographs with modern satellite topography to locate a specific patch of disturbed soil. The vast intelligence apparatus built to survive a superpower was now executing a 30-year ghost mission for one man. In 1997, excavators finally unearthed a skeleton missing both hands. Castro sent a military plane to bring his friend's remains back to Havana, receiving the coffin personally as millions of Cubans lined the streets in an emotional procession. Che Guevara was laid to rest at a specialized memorial in Santa Clara, the city where his bulldozer tactics won the revolution's decisive battle. Castro's invisible shield defeated 638 assassination attempts, while buying him the time to fulfill his final vow to his revolutionary brother.